The closet in the hallway had always been there. Old, heavy, with a scratched door, as if it had lived through more than their whole family. As a child, Alice used to hide inside it when her parents fought. As a teenager, she hid her diaries there, along with her tears and letters no one was ever meant to see. Now she was 27, and she was opening that closet no longer as a child. She was opening it after the funeral. Her father had died suddenly. His heart, they said. That was what they wrote down. That was what everyone kept repeating, as though words could make death easier to understand. People came, hugged her, and whispered, "Stay strong. He was a good man. Now you have to be brave." But inside, Alice carried the feeling that everything had happened too quickly, too neatly, as if someone had been waiting for exactly this ending. The apartment still smelled of the memorial gathering, hot tea, bread, other people's perfume, and old furniture. Sarah, her mother, sat motionless in the kitchen, her gaze empty. She wasn't crying. Sometimes pain becomes so heavy that even tears refuse to come. Alice wandered from room to room, as though checking whether everything else had disappeared along with her father. And then she saw it. The closet door was slightly open. Just a little. Only enough for her to notice the corner of an envelope through the crack. White, clean, no dust, as if it had been placed there recently. A chill ran down Alice's spine. She stepped closer, pulled out the envelope, and saw the words. "Alice, do not show Sarah." Her hand trembled. Not, "I love you." Not, "Forgive me." A warning. She closed the bedroom door, sat down on the floor the way she had as a child, and opened the letter. It was her father's handwriting, Daniel's. Heavy, pressed deep into the paper, as if each letter had been dragged out of him by force. "If you are reading this, then I am dead, and that means I was not allowed to tell the truth while I was alive. Alice, I am more guilty toward you than you could ever imagine. I kept silent because I thought silence protected people. But silence is a knife too. It just cuts more slowly. 20 years ago, your mother saved my life. And for that, I gave her something I had no right to give anyone. You are not my daughter by blood, but you are my daughter by love. I held you when you were sick. I taught you how to ride a bicycle. I feared every minute you were late getting home. If you want to know the truth, look on the bottom shelf of the closet, behind the plywood panel. And, Alice, do not show this to Sarah. She will not survive the truth, and she may destroy you." Time stopped. "You are not my daughter by blood." Alice read the line 3 times. The world around her seemed to drift backward, and the paper became the only real thing in the room. She went to the closet, dropped to her knees, felt along the thin plywood backing, and pulled. The panel gave way. Behind it lay a small folder. Another birth certificate. A photograph of a young woman holding a baby. A yellowed envelope. Alice picked up the photograph and stopped breathing. The woman in the picture was not Sarah, but she had Alice's eyes, the same brow line, the same beauty mark near her lip, as if someone had taken her out of someone else's arms and rewritten her life. She opened the second envelope. There were only a few lines inside. "Her name is Ava. She is your mother. She did not die. She disappeared. And strangers were not the ones who did it. Her number is below. If I do not make it in time, call her yourself." A rushing sound filled Alice's ears. At once Sarah flashed in her mind, quiet in the kitchen, motionless, hollow. And with that came a terrible thought. Did she know? Footsteps sounded outside the door. "Alice, what are you doing in there?" Sarah's voice was too calm. "Nothing, Mom." "Open the door." There was no request in her voice, only control. Alice quickly hid the documents under her sweater, sat down on the edge of the bed, and stared at Ava's number. Her phone shook in her hands. She pressed call. 1 ring, a second, a third. Then a woman's voice answered. hoarse as if it had forgotten how to hope long ago. "Yes?" Alice could not speak right away. "This is Alice," she whispered. "I found a letter from Daniel. He wrote that you are my mother." Silence fell on the other end. Then the woman began to cry, quietly, brokenly. "I'm coming," she said. "Don't go anywhere, and please, don't stay alone with her." At that moment, the doorknob jerked. "Alice, open the door right now." Alice stood, walked to the door and said, "I need to be alone." "Open it this instant." No. Even to her own ears, that no sounded unfamiliar. 20 minutes later, a dark car stopped beneath the window. Her phone vibrated again. "I'm here. Come out quietly. Let's go to the garden behind the house." Alice looked out the window. A woman stood by the gate in a dark coat, pale, tired, with the face of someone who had lived with pain for far too long, and with her eyes. Alice slipped out of the apartment quickly without looking toward the kitchen. Sarah called after her, but she did not stop. She only heard the anxious cry behind her. "Where are you going?" She did not answer. The courtyard was dark. Behind the house stretched an old, neglected garden, bare apple trees, wet paths, a bench beneath a lamp, the faint smell of damp earth. Eva was waiting there. For several seconds they simply looked at each other, not like mother and daughter, like two people who had suddenly recognized their own face in someone else. "Eva," Alice exhaled. The woman nodded. Tears were already shining in her eyes. "Yes." They sat on the old bench in the garden. The wind stirred the branches above them, and the darkness around them felt more honest than everything Alice had known before that night. "Tell me the truth," Alice whispered. "Now, all of it." Eva pulled a clear folder from her bag. Inside were copies of documents, an old hospital tag, a photo of the maternity ward, and a tiny knitted sock. "This was yours," Eva said. "I knitted it at night while I was pregnant. I thought that once you were born, I would finally understand life, but I understood nothing." Alice stared at the sock and felt a pain rising inside her, a pain she had never had a name for. "Why didn't you come for me?" Her voice broke. "Where were you all these years?" Eva closed her eyes. "I did come, many times, but they told me you had died during childbirth. I had severe bleeding and lost consciousness. When I woke up, the crib was empty. They showed me papers. They said you hadn't survived." "And you believed them?" "No." I screamed. I begged them to show me your body. They never did. Then they started saying I was in shock, that I was losing my mind. They injected me with sedatives. By the time I got out of the hospital, your trail had vanished." Alice felt the air growing heavier. "Who did it?" Eva was silent for a long time. "Sarah and Daniel." Alice turned away sharply. "No." "Yes," Eva said quietly. "Sarah lost her baby that night, a girl. Daniel was working at the hospital then. He saw me. He saw you. He saw Sarah. And he broke. Pity turned into a crime. They decided they could begin a new life at my expense. But he loved me," Alice forced out. "He did," Eva answered. "And that is why he tormented himself for 20 years. Weak people commit terrible things too, Alice. Not only cruel ones. Sometimes the worst acts are committed by those who simply could not bear their own pain." Alice covered her face with her hands. The father who fixed her bicycle, the father who carried her on his shoulders, the father who helped steal her from her real mother. And the fact that her love for him did not disappear only made it hurt more. "I found him 4 days ago," Eva continued. "He contacted me himself. He said he couldn't stay silent anymore. He said Sarah had figured everything out, and he was afraid for you. He gave me copies of the documents, and he cried." Alice slowly lifted her head. 4 days ago? Yes, and 2 days later, he was dead. Too fast, too neat, just as she had felt. You think it wasn't just his heart? Ava took out another sheet of paper. A toxicologist I know looked over the list of medications Daniel had been taking. His heart really was weak, but traces of one drug in his blood should not have been there. I can't prove it completely yet. Not yet. Alice's fingers went cold. Her phone vibrated in her hand. Sarah. Then an immediate text message. Come home right now. Alice did not reply. Ava looked at her carefully, as though afraid to touch her even with her eyes. I'm not asking you to call me Mom tonight, she said. I'm not asking you to love me in a single evening. I only want you to know the truth, so that at last you can have a life of your own, not the one that was chosen for you. At that moment, footsteps sounded along the path. Sarah. She was walking quickly through the garden, not with a woman's careful pace, but like someone driven by panic. No coat, hair disheveled. Her face no longer held a mask or ordinary exhaustion, only the terror of losing what she believed belonged to her. Get away from her, Sarah said softly, staring at Ava. Alice stood up. Stop. Sarah turned to look at her, and there was no anger in her eyes now. Only pleading. Alice, come home. Home? Alice echoed. Whose home? Sarah flinched. I raised you. I was there all these years. I sat beside your bed when you were sick. I held you when you cried. I got you ready for school. Where was she? They told her I died. Sarah's face twitched. Yes, she whispered, because otherwise you might have died for real. Ava stepped forward. Don't justify this. Sarah turned on her sharply. You want the truth? Fine. Tell her who her father is. Tell her. Alice looked at Ava. Ava had gone pale. Your biological father, Sarah said slowly, was a dangerous man. He trafficked people. Ava was trying to escape him when she was pregnant. Daniel was helping her. If that man had found out the baby was alive, he would have found both of you. We hid you, yes, but first, we were saving you. Alice felt the world tilt again. Not one evil, several at once. Fear, guilt, blood, pity, crime, love, all tangled together. So you stole me and called it salvation? She whispered. Sarah lowered her eyes. At first, it was salvation. And then, you became mine. No, Ava said quietly. Someone else's child does not become yours just because you cannot survive your own loss. Suddenly Sarah snapped, and how was I supposed to live? I lost my daughter. I held an empty blanket. I would never have survived it. And then she appeared, alive, warm, breathing, and I clung to her. I loved her. I truly loved her. Tears streamed down her cheeks, real tears, and that made it even more frightening, because a monstrous act does not stop being monstrous simply because love was mixed into it. Alice looked at her for a long moment. Did you love Dad too? Sarah froze. The silence lasted 1 second, and that was enough. I didn't mean to kill him, she whispered. I only switched the pills. I thought he would get sick, get scared, and choose us again. But his heart. She covered her face with her hands. Ava turned pale. Alice took a step back, as if the ground beneath her had become foreign. You killed him. No, I didn't mean to. You killed him because he finally decided to tell the truth. Sarah broke into sobs. I just couldn't survive losing you a second time. Alice looked at her and felt that in one evening she had lost all her parents at once. One mother, because she had stolen her life. Her father, because he had turned out to be a weak accomplice. And her other mother, because she was alive but had lived 20 years without her. Alice took out her phone and dialed the police. I need to report a child abduction that happened 20 years ago, she said quietly but firmly. And a possible murder. Sarah flinched as if struck. Alice, please. For the first time that night, she was speaking not like the owner of someone else's fate, but like a person who finally understood that everything was over. "If you ever truly loved me," Alice said, not taking her eyes off her, "then for once, stop choosing yourself." Sarah slowly sank down onto the bench. "I really did love you," she whispered. Alice felt tears rising again. "I know, but love doesn't give you the right to steal someone else's life." In the distance, sirens were already growing louder. Eva stood beside her, but did not touch her. There was more respect in that than Alice had received in all her life. For the first time, she had been given the right to breathe without someone trying to pull her close for their own sake. By dawn, they went to the cemetery. The sky was gray and wet, as if it too was exhausted by everything that had happened that night. Alice stood at Daniel's grave and could not tell what there was more of inside her, love or fury. Probably both. She laid the tiny knitted sock on the cold stone and whispered, "You were my father, and you broke my life. You loved me, and you betrayed me. You wanted to tell the truth, but it was too late." Tears dripped onto the stone. Eva stood behind her, alive, real, strange, and familiar at the same time. And suddenly Alice understood the most honest thing of all. There would be no beautiful ending, no morning when everything would finally become clear. No one mother, no one truth, no one love. There would only be life after the lie, and she would have to learn how to live that life too. Slowly she turned toward Eva. Eva was looking at her with such careful hope, as if she was afraid even to breathe too loudly. "I can't call you Mom today," Alice said softly. Pain crossed Eva's face, but she nodded. "I know." Alice paused, then added, "But if you really have been looking for me all these years, don't disappear again. Ever." Eva covered her mouth with her hand and began to cry. Quietly, for real. And then Alice stepped toward her first, not like a child toward a mother, not like a daughter toward salvation, but like one human being toward another, who had also lived in darkness for far too long. They embraced in silence, between night and morning, between a grave and the beginning of a new life. That embrace did not fix the past, but maybe for the first time it was not a lie.